oppose. They knew that they couldn't oppose. They had to abstain. Yes. So even the 53 that abstained, they didn't have the courage to look us in the face and say we disagree. Yeah. They were hiding. They were running.
Silence means consent.
And you, Ghanaian politician, Ghanaian intellectual, you come brazenly and say it was wrong.
We must begin to do things that are right. Unless until we remove borders in Africa, trade amongst ourselves, a continent that sits on trillions of dollars. We are not able to even do business with us. So take a typical case, and this is why I'm going to lead to your next topic. Our next door is Nigeria. Nigeria imports salt from Brazil, whereas they resort at Adasongo. Is it because of the transatlantic trade that Nigeria is unable to do business with Ghana? So we must also begin to do ourselves self-introspection, so that things that could help propel the continent to a different stage, we handle them carefully. Again,
abusiye mo bibia kwa ba na yem fambra mega TV and platform we eso ene the Palm Sunday. In fact, the Palm Sunday, what I say, Easter na muna ye now. Uncle Kwesi Pratt Jr. and Solomon Owusu and the other two communicators, Omotenase, Abba Bansemu, on the video, ewa, papa, ewa. Never be a me was see and some regional me and so air to giddy. Not just a Palm Sunday, and I have the dead. I was saying, sir, Transatlantic slave trade, and I know you're president, equal United States, any UN assembly, and I saw Mukwedi who abobo and now so mutuaba, not just say, African, John Muhammad Jina Yemu, and I saw Jina Nemu Ko, not just ye didn't kunim say, ampa transatlantic slave trade, in fact, a idea I'm a boy Africa. I said, you will say, Yado, or the ehu, ebetoy, so, or the oseye, in fact, or the a year in you any sebi, papa mu at the bra Africa, and I was all more compensate here. I was here, same way, Kwesi Pratt Jr. Any Solomon Owusu, Atlas, I be one after the other. Say, a case bibi. And conforming explanation of certain topic, I'll give it to Kwesi Pratt Jr. Any Solomon Owusu. It's answer and Kofoya being papa or more dream about bill. Now, till summer or mocha, anyhow, or more as trouble was always explaining things. Over bones, some Edia Moma, young go. Some back I am a mocha saying the other issue, BT said. The what do call it Ibrahim Mahama any the brother issues so can be any basically Iran Israeli US war no so matter mbo say adwudwam omadwudwam yenkoti nse ni bia kobe beto so
able to deliver. Mr. Pratt, it's been a long time. Good to see you. And to Sebe, who is for the New Patriotic Party. Senna, this topic, I think we discussed about a month ago, and I shared an opinion on it. My whole interest in this reparation became evident when I attended Mr. Pratt's launch of the reparation book. And I must confess, I enjoyed, and I've read the book as well. And his position on matters, really, to a large extent, is what I share. You remember the last time we discussed this topic here? I took a certain position. And I remember what Suhini did. By and large, it's my position that those that hold the view that reparation must not be accepted they hold. You see? And that is why I said the last time that I like the angle that Mr. Pratt tackled this whole issue. If you want to succeed in everything, you must read the minds of the people that you are dealing with. The impression was created by a number of African leaders that our budget deficit could be closed with getting some funds from reparation. So in other words, the idea of getting the world to understand and accept and apologize that look, never again must we be taken through the route of human beings selling fellow human beings, we lost it. The focus was gradually shifting. So you remember on that day, I said here that what value are you going to put? He is a valuer, I'm a valuer. What value are you going to put on someone who was chained for anyone to pay you? But rather, accepting that you erred, what you did was wrong, is enough reparation. We come back home and do what we got to do. Because for Christ's sake, I am of the firm belief and conviction that Africa has more than what it takes to turn around our fortunes, regardless of whatever has happened to us. Is it because of transatlantic trade, slave trade, that Nana Akufo-Addo dug that hole and spent the $97 million? It's an emphatic no. We could have used that money to change our fortunes. Is it because of the transatlantic slave trade that between 2017 to 2024, as a country, we lost 81 billion through corruption? That is the hell no. So for me, my attitude is that, yes, there has to be that acceptance. And indeed, those that even abstain, deep within them, they know what was the reason the United States started. What was their reason for voting against it? They said that they admit the wrongdoing. That is an admission. But the reason why they will not go ahead to vote for it, they know the next leg, that you have to compensate them monetarily. And that is why they came in with the idea that, look, we are not clear in our minds, those that are demanding reparation today, whether or not they are even linked to those that suffered. That is the argument. Now I've listened to those that have stayed, a couple of countries. I mean, this morning I was listening to our sister who has decided to also go and take a turn on a new leave, and so she wants to behave British more than anybody. Kemi Bednock saying that, look, Britain should have voted against. Not that she does not believe that something wrong happened. Her view is that China, Iran, and all those countries voted for the motion. And now if we are going to say we are abstaining, when they decide to come for their trillions, then we will see that we erred. So it is about the monetary consideration. What they are not too sure of. Other than that, if you disagree, you say you will disagree. You will vote against it. But they are afraid of the next leg. Again, if you look at the index, you had about 3.6 billion people per day, the data that I have, being sent to slavery from Angola. Nigeria about 2 million. Ghana about 1.6 million. Because in all these figures, we are talking between the period of the slavery, we are talking about close to 12 million people from Africa that were sent there. How are you going to even do the distribution of the money? How are you going to do it? And don't forget, as we speak, there is modern day slavery. This time around, we are even paying to be enslaved. How many times have I not referred you to your embassy here, the Canadian embassy here? Any morning you go, someone is holding accordion, whatever, God will do it. God. They are all going, we are paying visa fees into slavery. What about the United States of America embassy? They take money and they bounce our people. They refuse to even refund the money to them. I say I want to visit your country. You did not give me the visa. Why are you interested in my money? So I would want to commend those that led this whole resolution, particularly our President John Mahama and the African Union for putting it up. At least the 123 countries that accepted that is the gravest crime of all time, they have made the point. Matters must end there. We must, as a matter of fact, from where I sit, begin to go back and do what is right to change the narrative on our own. Nobody will come on the African continent and build it unless we begin to take ourselves serious. We are talking about life after slavery. We are unable to do business together as Africans. Look at the huge potential we have on the subcontinent or the continent of Africa. Resources abound everywhere. What is becoming an obstacle between we having a dam on the river, the Congo River? What is it? So that in the next 100 years, we will not come back here and be discussing the same topic. Anytime I have visited South Africa, I keep telling them that, look, when you take a taxi, that driver will tell you, I am driving because apartheid destroyed my life. I say, look, move beyond apartheid. Because whether you like it or it's part of your history. But what you do after the so-called abandonment of apartheid is what matters. So that your children and your unborn generation will also not come and sing the same chorus. And for me, it's very instructive. Look, I was just reading a piece here. Ghana slips in mining investment. And why have we slipped? Because according to the mind, or in the mind of the former Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Abu Jirapo, the foreigners are not investing in our mines. This is part of slavery. That after so many years, several years of we mining in this country, we are not even thinking of how Ghanaians will take over our resources. But rather, our situation is worse off because foreigners who only come to this country and take out our money are not coming back. And so having been compensated, and you still have people with this mindset, are we still not in the same situation that we complain of? No, we are still in there. So I am for total liberation of the mind, the Ghanaian and the African taking over its economy to do what is right for its people. The only way the Western world will begin to take us serious, and when we speak or when we cough, they will cut cold, is when they see that we have decided to embark on a journey of development. Because beyond the slavery, beyond the heinous crime that they committed against us, now we sit in the same classroom with them. We sit in their Harvard, we sit in their Yale, we sit in their Massachusetts, we sit everywhere, we compete. Why is it that when we go and acquire the knowledge, we are unable to turn things around when we come back home? Your former finance minister, did he not attend Yale? Did he decide to come and do it destroy the economy because he went to Yale, or because of the transatlantic trade, slavery? He could have used the knowledge he acquired to also come and better our lot. You see, I am saying all this because a time will come, the unborn generation will never forgive us. They themselves will turn around and tell us that enough is enough. You have said this. At what point are you going to say that they did this to us, but because we were resolute, we were resilient, we have been able to turn it around, and now your lives are better? That is what I want to hear now. And not the other way around. Because we are also part of the blame. The African is part, the black race is also part of the blame. Remember, it wasn't only the whites that came here to take our people out. They had collaborators, conspirators to do that. They must also be boxed into the whole issue. It takes two to tango. So those that took part in asking people to apologize, they must also apologize. They capitalized on the tribal wars that was happening and sold their fellow human beings to these people. Some died. We understand that about 450,000 died in embarking on this journey with ships that belonged to the British. Several others also died along the way, by the way. So, Sana, it's something that must remind us all the time that we will resolve as a continent to develop. That is where my focus is. You have millions of our youth not having jobs. So to that youth, to that Gen Z, if you go and talk to him about slavery, he won't get it. He believes that, look, you have to provide me with my needs. So with the bigger resources that we are getting, what are we doing with it? And it's a serious matter. If you look at the composition of the 123 members that voted for the resolution, largely Africa and Caribbean, because all of them have been affected. So it's a good thing that we have had it. Leaders must come back. In fact, the AU beyond this must also resolve. There has to be an AU resolution at the AU itself to tell us that by the next year, Africa will be a borderless continent. That we are also enslaving ourselves here. If I want to move out, move from Ghana to Nigeria, the borders alone will take you out. We live on a continent where a South African xenophobic attack would look at a colleague black African and will be chasing him and leave the Caucasian. It happens. So don't let us delude ourselves that we do not have issues amongst ourselves. How well are we? What steps are we taking to resolve the very issues that bother us so that we can move ahead and become a continent or the toast of the world? In this regard, I will end my submission here and wish the AU the very best of luck.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
On this particular issue, there seems to have been for some unity when it comes to the African countries in pushing for this agenda. A few of the comments that you're sharing with us, there's Francis Gordon, who says, on reparation, a key component is the return of thousands of cultural artifacts plundered during colonial rule, which is seen as crucial for restoring cultural dignity and history. If these items and artifacts are returned, it will boost tourism in Africa. Neil Ate says, we deliberately destroy our economy by being greedy, corrupt, and go to the slave masters for bailout. We are currently enslaving ourselves by our corrupt activities on the continent. Bedu Kwame Solo, we are unable to transform our knowledge into practice because we fail to continue what Kwame Nkrumah started. Build strong institutions and abide by the rules of the institution. That's why Mahama has to continue after this term. That's Bedu Kwame. He again says, I'm worried that behind all this issue of reparation, the Arabs are being left alone and no one is talking about them. Have we forgotten who started this? And I think it's the same view that's shared by Sokwoli Hile. So those are some of the comments that we are hearing. La, good morning. Let's hear from you.
Thank you. Very good morning to all our viewers as well. It's an interesting one. And what I will first say is that continuing from where Solo left off, if Africa, we do not unite, we are going nowhere. That is the first thing we should all acknowledge. And this reparation thing, let me congratulate Africa, especially Ghana, and for that matter, the President of the Republic, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, for moving the motion. And we should all acknowledge that this fight has never been about one particular person. If we talk about people like the comrade himself, Kwesi Pratt, and his socialist forum.
Movement of Ghana.
You go to the internet and type anything regarding reparation or Pan-African, you will see the things that they have been forcefully saying over the years. And I believe that getting to this far, all those works that they have done have contributed to where we've gotten to. And I congratulate them all for what they have done. You see, if we are to unite as Africa, it should start from home. And in these processes, it is clear that Ghana has played a very significant role in achieving this height. We tend to politicize everything in this country. This is one thing that I expected, that we all came together as one people leading Africa and ensuring that the right thing is done. But something happened in 2023 which I only got to know of because I never paid attention to it. When President Akufo-Addo went to the same forum and spoke about this reparation, we got a whole professor stating that because we've not dealt with all corruption cases in Ghana, and because there are still loopholes in the system, reparation is not justifiable. We cannot justify it. Why? Because there is corruption. And he went to the extent of mentioning Cecilia Dapa's name as being corrupt. What has the corruption in Ghana gotten to do with the justification of reparation? What has that got to do with it? Are we saying that some people are corrupt in Ghana, and therefore the heinous crime that was perpetrated on our people there is no justification for us to seek for this apology and possibly get the compensation that we need? Is that what we are saying? How can that be a reason why we shouldn't fight for what is rightfully ours? And to me, I think we should even go beyond just this apology and claim what is rightfully ours. And they themselves, they know. Those who perpetrated these heinous crimes against us, they know. You see, in this slavery, I think, if I'm wrong, Comrade is here and he will educate me on that. It is not only Africans that were taken as slaves. Some Europeans were also taken as slaves. But the difference is that the European slave, when he works, he's being paid. But the African slave works and he's not being paid. So all the works that our people suffered and helped in developing those nations, are we saying that there is no justification for us to get any compensation for what they did to us? Literally, didn't they steal from us our resources, our gold, our diamonds? So if you've taken something that is not yours, isn't it rightful that you return it to the owners? I know very well that you know Calvin Mackenzie. The 70s, now around 79 years, yes. It was his time that the Sun, he was the editor of the Sun newspaper, that the Sun became almost the leading newspaper in the UK. This is what he has stated just after the voting. He said, and I quote him, and he was very angry with the fact that UK abstained. And to him, UK should have forcefully fought against the motion. This is what Mackenzie said. He said, what is incredible about this is that reparation would, at the low end, cost us billions. At the middle, cost us trillions. And at the top end, would cost us probably the entire economy's GDP. This is what Calvin Mackenzie is saying. And he's a top-notch journalist in this world. He's so furious that his government could not stand against the motion and ensure that the motion failed. So they themselves, they know the consequences. So why shouldn't we go after what belongs to us? That is not to downplay the fact that we as Africans, we as, for that matter, Ghanaians, we should come together and do the right thing for ourselves. Build our nation ourselves. But it doesn't free the others from taking what rightfully belongs to us. I've heard somebody saying that, oh, there is no need, and if we are compensated because there is corruption in the system, our leaders are going to embezzle them. What kind of discussions are these? Something is going to collapse the economy of UK. It tells you that they themselves, they know what they have done to Africa, the African continent. It is a fight. We started somewhere. When it was started, people never had faith. We thought these movements and other things, probably they are just making ugly noises that will not see any light of day. Here we are. They have struggled with their blood. And it is not easy. It's not a joke to go against countries like the UK and then the US in these matters. Here is the case. They have struggled, and now the world has accepted that that is the grievous crime that has ever been perpetrated against any group of people in the world. So what stops us from moving forward? If we have been able to attain this feat, I am very sure that putting the right measures in place, after all, if we don't get all that we want, we will get something substantial, and that will help this nation. Senna, I rest my case here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A couple of comments, and I will still read a few more. There are some that are obviously ignored. There's Kamal Dokurugi Ibrahim, who says, good morning. On the topic of UN resolution on the transatlantic slave trade and reparations, kudos to President Mahama, the AU, and all those who have worked tirelessly in diverse ways to see this dream become a reality. Beyond its historic nature, it's timely and has been championed under the right leadership. However, I think there's still more work to be done at the practical level, and I worry where we go from this official passage of the resolution. For instance, will it be the case that individual countries be left to pursue their former colonial masters for these reparations? Is the AU going to represent the entire continent? What about those in the diaspora? What are the mechanisms in place to ensure that such reparations don't end up in the hands of these same people, given the state of leadership in some of our countries? I guess these are legitimate questions to worry about in the future. But for now, let's celebrate this historic moment. John Okujeto Ablako was clear. He said they are not placing a transactional value on what they are seeking for. But anyway, there's also, this one says, Solo was speaking well, but now he's lost it by thinking wrongly that Africans sold each other into slavery. Who told him that? I want to know. Professor Tutankhamun, I hope I got your name well. Yes. And then there's this. And then there's Suleiman Abdurrahim, who says, thanks to President Mahama for drawing the West's attention to the injustices they committed. A few more from WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp platform. This is Kujo from Qatar. Says, listening to Afenyomakin's submission on reparation issues, I have come to the conclusion that this man, Afenyomakin, should be told in the face that he's making himself very vulnerable. He is making himself forcefully and unnecessarily a hero. I don't know if he talks, he listens to himself, and if he doesn't, somebody should tell him. Is he aware of this? The slave masters came with Bible and guns. I don't know what to say about this man. To him, what JDM presented at the UN summit was trash. To me, this man doesn't deserve to be in parliament. His heroism is becoming too much of a nuisance. That's coming from Kujo, who sent that. Okay, says Benin refused to vote. Realize that. There's also this one, Peaceman from Boku says, demanding for compensation from the transatlantic slave trade is the approval of all what happened to Africa and Africans from the transatlantic slave trade. We don't even need any reparation. What we need is fixing our rotten system that's making Africans still dependent to their former slave masters. Eric Okono from La Paz says, concerning slave trade, white people took advantage of our gold and misused our great-grandfathers. I salute President John Mahama for this move. Thank you very much for those comments, but please kindly pay attention to some of the things that have been said here. Mr. Pratt.
First and foremost, something very, very significant happened on the 25th of March. Something which shook the foundations of geopolitics as we know it today happened in the UN General Assembly. The world voted and decided that the transatlantic slave trade is the worst crime against humanity ever committed. This has seismic effect. And since then, in every space in the world where geopolitics is discussed, this has been the most important topic. In some areas, even the ongoing war of aggression being waged by Israel and the United States of America against Iran has receded into the background. I mean, this event has had a seismic effect. Now, if you look at the reactions to what has happened and so on, it also tells us very important stories about the people, the countries, organizations, and so on, which are taking different positions. Now, let's look at the voting pattern in the UN. And what does it tell us? One, you have the United States of America, which by any estimate is the biggest beneficiary of this crime, this horrendous crime which was committed against the African people. Does it take any effort to understand the United States of America's position? The biggest beneficiary of this horrendous crime which was committed against the African people. I'm not surprised that the US took that position. Then you come to Argentina. Argentina had one of the largest populations of African slaves. Today, you go to Argentina and it is difficult to identify the black community in Argentina, because it deliberately carried out genocide against the African people. Genocide, deliberately carried out genocide against the African people. So Argentina is complicit in these crimes, and even beyond, after the abolition. After the abolition of the slave trade, Argentina continued to exterminate the black population. Can anybody be surprised? Certainly not. Then you come to Israel, which is, as we speak, committing genocide. In Palestine alone, it has killed 78,000 people, a number far bigger than the Jewish population which was exterminated during the Holocaust. 2/3 of those killed in Gaza are women and children. Israel is continued its policy of apartheid. Israel is an apartheid state. How does anybody expect an apartheid state which is in the midst of the commission of genocide, to support such a resolution. So, no doubt, you understand, it's understandable. Then you come to the European community and its states. And, Massa, you just quoted Mackenzie. His reasons are clear that if we pursue this question of reparation, Europe will become bankrupt. Europe will die.
We have to sell the UK.
Why? Because today there is no institution in Europe, educational institution, financial institution, religious institution, there is no institution in Europe which is not surviving or making progress because of the accumulation which was made from the transatlantic slave trade. Every institution in Europe. Europe is what it is because of our exploitation. And that exploitation continues till today. And I've always given one example. Look at Barclays Bank. Barclays Bank, the Barclays Bank we see today, and we think is doing so well. What is its origin? Barclays Bank was established by the Barclay brothers, two brothers, who were slave traders. Barclays Bank was established with slave money. Okay? Look at the religious institutions. The richest religious institution in the world today, in terms of its land ownership, in terms of its interest in financial institutions as well, is the Catholic Church. A big beneficiary of the transatlantic slave trade. In fact, the legal justification for the transatlantic slave trade was issued by the Pope, the papal bull, issued in 1452. You understand? So if we pursue this agenda of reparation, they fear, the Europeans fear, that their economies will collapse. They will have nothing to hang on. Already today, as we speak here, the inflation, the rate of inflation in Britain, as of a couple of weeks ago, was 30%. The British economy is dying. The German economy, which was robust, is now nose diving and so on. They are in a panic state. So if you listen to their politicians who are saying that, oh, they should even have voted against the resolution and so on, the reason they give is that if we come for what belongs to us, they will have nothing left. We should wake up. You understand? We should wake up. Now, my brother, if you come to examine the reasons why people are taking different positions and so on, you will be amazed. There are some people who think that this whole exercise was led by President John Dramani Mahama. It has improved his stature in the world. Today, he appears as a leader of not just Africa, but a leader of Africa and the Caribbean. He's a prominent leader and so on. They cannot tolerate it. If you continue to push this agenda for reparation and so on, they think it enhances the personality of John Dramani Mahama. So don't do it. Pull it down. Pull it down to finish Mahama. But they forget that in that myopic exercise of pulling down Mahama, they pull down themselves, they pull down their communities, they pull down their country, and eventually pull down the whole of Africa and the African diaspora. They forget it. So there's that block which is there. Now there's another block of petty bourgeois intellectuals and business people who are sitting down and are planning to go to New York. They are planning to go to Washington. They are looking at the consular officer at the US Embassy. I'm going to present my passport for a visa. I should say things which would not annoy them so that I can get my visa. That category is there. The visa politicians, they're there. So for them, all of this discussion is about them applying for visa and getting visas. And they want to be seen. They want the US Embassy to hear them. That they are defending them so they can get visas. They are there. That's their interest. Petty as that interest is, that interest is still there. Then, Senna, there are those of us who are completely miseducated. And it is not our fault that we are miseducated. We were born into a system where our educational curriculum was decided by the slave owners. Okay? And they gave us an orientation. They shaped our views about the world. They shaped our views about geopolitical events and so on. So it was that we went to schools in which we were told that colonialism had negative and positive impacts. Positive impacts of colonialism. So we went to schools which taught us that the transatlantic slave trade had a positive impact. So in our final examinations, we were asked to write essays about the positive and negative impact of the slave trade. Total miseducation.
And write some
So you see us, and sometimes we carry the title of professor, Professor Kominini, Dr. This. We have master's degrees and so on. But Master, our brains are full of cotton wool inserted into our skulls by our oppressors. You understand? Master, there are some of us who would not identify with African spirituality because we have been made to believe that identifying with African spirituality will send us straight to hell. So there are some of us who, even when we have become leaders of our countries and so on, insist that we should not pour libation at state functions. Into that. And it is because of our miseducation. It is because we have been miseducated. That is why we take that. Because I have spoken to some people in my lifetime who have said the colonial era was better than today. They believe that. And one old lady that I spoke to who said that the colonial era was better than today, this must have been about 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when so-called essential commodities were difficult to come by. Imported evaporated milk was difficult to come by. Corned beef imported was difficult to come by. You couldn't find conflicts and so on. And this woman from my hometown in the central region thought that eating conflicts was better than drinking cocoa. And she couldn't find conflicts. She couldn't find condensed milk on the shelves and so on. So for her, colonialism was much, much better than the governments we've had after independence. And she's genuine about it. You understand? Her position, excuse my language, is absolutely silly. It is not liberating and so on. But that is her position. She believes it. She's genuine about it and so on. So these are the kinds of reactions that we are getting. Excuse me. I think it is important to test some of the claims. Snakes, like cows, and so on. You understand? We use snake skin, cow hide, and so on to make leather bags. That's how we were treated in the past. Our body was raw material for manufacturing belts and bags. That's one of the crimes committed against us. You understand? It didn't end there. Look, if an European or an American bought a slave, the slave was his or her property in the same way that the domestic fowl is your property. Because if the slave gave birth, the children did not belong to the slave, they belonged to the slave owner. Can you imagine it? This is the crime which is committed against us, one of the crimes committed against us. Now listen, the transatlantic slave trade led to the destruction of African science. Our science was deliberately destroyed. There is a case of a woman from Elimina here, who had a cat as a pet. This true story. And the cat scratched her, okay? So she had some skin problems and so on. So she used an African balm to cure the scratch. She was arrested for witchcraft, tried in the Elmina castle, eventually deported to Portugal for a continuation of the trial, and she was convicted of witchcraft. Do you get the import of this? If you use African medicine, it was witchcraft. You could be sentenced, you could be arrested, tried, prosecuted, and sentenced for using African medicine. This is a very well documented case in history. But you see, the people who are commenting on this matter, they don't know this. There was a deliberate effort to ridicule the African personality, to reduce the African personality to a subject of curiosity and so on. And again, there's a case of Brenda, a South African woman. You know, when the Europeans came here, they saw the African physique. It was different from their own physique. Our women are more endowed in the behind and so on. They saw it. Rather than admire it, you know what they did to Brenda? They captured Brenda, took her to Europe, put her in a glass cage, and exhibited her from city to city. This woman was so humiliated, she committed suicide. The African personality, the physical personality itself, was attacked by the transatlantic slave trade. You understand? Now, recently, talking about the destruction of African science and so on, recently, during the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of discussion about vaccines, vaccines and so on. I didn't know. In the course of the discussion about vaccines, it turned out that the art of vaccination, the technology of vaccination, came from West Africa. That it was a West African slave from the region of Liberia or thereabout who took that science to the United States of America. Today, how many African countries are producing vaccines? Look at the havoc we underwent when COVID broke out. This is the destruction of our science and so on. Now, you see, they say that the slave trade was backed by law. Who would dispute that? But we know that apartheid, the government of apartheid, exercises power through law, apartheid law. Does that justify apartheid? It doesn't. In the same way that the law which justified the transatlantic slave trade cannot be accepted by we the victims as lawful. And we know where that law came from. That law came from the Catholic Church. That law came from the US Supreme Court, and we cannot accept that as lawful. The other argument which they make, which just kills me, you know, and sometimes since this resolution was passed, I've heard even lawyers make that argument. And I'm wondering, are these lawyers making this argument? They say that, look, the resolution establishes a hierarchy of laws. And because it establishes a hierarchy of laws, it cannot be accepted. The American delegate made that argument. The delegates of the European Union made that argument. But Senna, it's one of the most useless arguments which has ever been made. Every law establishes a hierarchy. Ghana here, in Ghana, there are some crimes which are tried by the magistrate court. Alright? Some crimes cannot be tried by the magistrate court. They are tried by the circuit court. There are some crimes which cannot even be tried by the circuit court. They are tried by the high court. Is that not a hierarchy? For some crimes, you will end up with a small fine. You will go back home. In fact, bail is automatic for some crimes and so on. For some crimes, bail is not automatic. Is that not a hierarchy? For some crimes, you are sentenced to death by hanging. Is that not a hierarchy? So some crimes are more grievous than the others. And because some crimes are more grievous than the others, a hierarchy is established. So to argue that a resolution establishes a hierarchy of law and therefore that resolution must not be passed is to be mischievous, is to be dishonest, and is to display the highest level of illiteracy. Can't believe it. But they were making this dressed nicely in suit and tie, pretending to be representatives of civilized countries. And they were making this argument in the UN General Assembly. Okay? Now, Sana, then there is this other argument, and this argument simply just kills me. The argument that the African was complicit, that we sold our own people into slavery. Where is it coming from? Where are the facts? Look, the minimum estimate I have seen is that 12.6 million Africans were enslaved, shipped out of the continent and enslaved. Okay. But for every one African who was enslaved, 3 others were killed. How were they killed? They were killed because there were wars of resistance. Our people resisted slavery. We fought against it. Check the history of Dagbon. Check the history. Samora and Babatu and so on. Go and check the historical record. We fought against slavery. We died in the millions. More than 50 million Africans died fighting against the transatlantic slave trade. That is on the continent. On the slave ships, the resistance continued. We fought. Even when we arrived on the plantations, we continued to fight. That is how Toussaint Louverture, the founder of modern Haiti, became an African hero. Toussaint Louverture was a slave. He had no education. He educated himself. He mastered weaponry. He ran away from the slave plantation and organized to free other slaves, took them to the mountains and established the modern Republic of Haiti. The modern Republic of Haiti was established as a result of the resistance of the African people to the transatlantic slave trade. So if you don't know history, shut up. Don't waste our time. Look, my brother, if you go to Europe today, if you go to the European museums today, some of the things on display are the heads of Africans, heads which were cut by the colonial armies, by the enslaving armies. Whose heads are those on display? They are the heads of our heroes who resisted the transatlantic slave trade. They are the heads of our heroes who took up weapons and fought against the transatlantic slave trade. Those are the heads on display in the European museums today. They are not the heads of those who collaborated with them. They are the heads of those who fought them and so on. Yes, it is true that there were some Africans who served as guides. They didn't know the interior and so on. But those Africans themselves were victims. They were victims. They were not collaborators. They were victims. And that is why the benefit of the transatlantic slave trade is not in Africa, it is in Europe. If they were collaborators, they should have also benefited. Where are the benefits of the transatlantic slave trade in Africa today? Show me! Show me where the benefits are. So they were not collaborators, they were victims. In any case, we should ask the important question, very important question, which is that, look, which country in the world did not undergo slavery at some point in its development? You see, people don't learn, they don't read, they don't try to understand history, and they wake up and they talk nonsense. You see, I see history as a science. I'm a Marxist. I see history as a science. And there are two ways of understanding current society and visualizing future society. One of the ways is historical materialism, and then dialectical materialism. These are the two sciences which provides us with the guide. Now, Senna, every society in the world, European, Asian, Caribbean, African, whatever, started as a primitive communal society. None of us can escape that. We have our origins in the primitive communal society. If you go to secondary school, you are told that that is the era of hunter-gatherers. The era of the hunter-gatherer is the primitive communal society. Mas, are you listening? From there was a transition to the slave state. So all of us, Europeans, Africans, Asians, whatever, went through the slave state, where some owned others as a means of production and so on. So nobody escaped that. Now, that slave state in which we went does not justify the transatlantic slave trade. You understand? It was a socio-economic formation which emerged in our development. It doesn't justify the transatlantic slave trade. Of course, from the era of slavery, there was then the transition to the feudalist system, the feudalist era. And capitalism developed out of the feudalist era. And we believe that socialism would emerge out of the capitalist era. These are stages of development that every society has gone through. So to say that Africa had slaves and therefore Africa has no right to make any claims out of the transatlantic slave trade and so on is to display a level of ignorance which is monumental. A level of ignorance which is monumental. You don't even understand the stages of development that every society in the world has had to go through. You think it is Africa. Shame on you. Ignorance. Display of bloody ignorance. Unbelievable ignorance. You understand?
Maybe they are deliberate.
Well, but if you want to portray yourself deliberately as an ignorant person, then there's something wrong with you. How can we describe you beyond seeing you as a fool? You understand? But this is the reality. Yesterday, no, 2 days ago, I heard one of my colleagues in the media. What? Why would you give a microphone to such an ignorant person to poison our population? And you know what he was saying? That, oh, Africans, we had our own slaves. We used to call them Donko. The guys called them Udonko, and some people called them Donko, and so on. So these white people came, and they said they wanted slaves. And we willingly sold our Udonkos to them. This bloody, ignorant fool. Look, does not even know that there were wars, that the slaves were captured in wars, that there was massive armed resistance. He doesn't know. Doesn't know. And he proudly takes a microphone and stands in front of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana, and spews rubbish. Unbelievable. He doesn't know that there were wars of resistance. And I picked up the phone and I called him. I said, my friend, the right of free expression is there. We have to respect it and so on. But people like you are a danger to our society. Because you don't help us to progress. You kill us with your ignorance. You know, and you present your ignorance to us in style. You present your poison to us in suits and sword. Unbelievable. Sana. Then there are those who argue. Oh, and I am fascinated by this level of stupidity. Those who argue that our African leaders, they are very corrupt too. They are so corrupt that if you go and collect reparation and you give it to them, they will chop it. First of all, there's the admission that the reparation is there. It's not in the hands of our African leaders. Okay, it's somewhere. Why the reparation is today that we are going to collect? Are the people not corrupt? Is corruption an African phenomenon? Are we now saying that only Africans can be corrupt? I remember when there was an audit into the British parliamentary system, and I'm sure some of you would remember, and they found that the lords sitting in the House of Lords, some of them, were stealing the British taxpayers' money to buy pornographic materials. Yeah. Are they not corrupt? Is corruption an African thing? So as for African leaders, they are so corrupt that you shouldn't give them reparation money, they will chop it. But European leaders, they are not corrupt, so they can keep our money which they have stolen and use it for their development so that we don't develop. What logic is this? What stupidity is this? I can't believe it. And Africans are making this argument. Let us agree our leaders are corrupt. European leaders are also corrupt. Let the money come so that African corrupt leaders will chop it. It is better for African corrupt leaders to chop the money than European corrupt leaders to chop the money. So even if you agree that African leaders are corrupt, let them chop our money. What is this argument? Where is it coming from? Such a stupid argument. And it is made with smiles. People make it with smiles and so on. Why? European leaders, are they not corrupt? But they are keeping the money. And you are happy with them keeping the money. But when the money comes to Africa, you are worried. You see, and Senna, these things, they are not new. They are old. The people taking these positions, look at their history. look at their background and you begin to understand. I remember that after independence, Kwame Nkrumah decided to change the national currency to the cedi. First of all to the Ghana pound and then eventually to the cedi and so on. The old money we were using, the British pound, had the head of state of the United Kingdom on it. The Queen's head was on the currency. So Ghana decided that we will put our head of state's head on our currency. They said, what? Dictatorship. We won't agree. But when the Queen's head was on the currency, it was not dictatorship. It was okay. It was democracy. As soon as you change the Queen's head to Kwame Nkrumah's head, it becomes a dictatorship. They are the same people making these arguments today. Sana Alai, are they not the same people making these arguments today? They have a history. They are being consistent. But you see, they forget. They've been left behind. Africa is moving forward. The Caribbean is moving forward. Asia is moving forward. We've left them behind. Their history, and they have chosen to be forgotten, to remain in the past. We will move forward. This is a resolution which was passed by 123 countries. You want to step on it? It doesn't mean the majority of countries in the world, overwhelming majority of countries in the world voted for it. Those who abstained did not even feel the moral courage to oppose. They couldn't oppose. They knew that they couldn't oppose. They had to abstain. Yes. So even the 53 that abstained, they didn't have the courage to look us in the face and say we disagree. Yeah. They were hiding. They were running.
Silence means consent.
And you, Ghanaian politician, Ghanaian intellectual, you come brazenly and say it was wrong. You are worse than the colonialists. You are worse than the perpetrator of the transatlantic slave trade. You are scum. You are the scum of the earth. That is what you are. You are the scum of the earth. Why? You did not deserve anything. You sold your soul. Before the resolution was passed, the Reverend Al Sharpton, I'm sure you all saw him, the African American priest, he made a speech, a very passionate speech, in which he said, if you are an African or a person of African descent and you oppose this resolution, you are selling your soul. You are not worth anything. That's Reverend Al Sharpton. Not me, Reverend Al Sharpton. He said that in the chambers of the UN. And we didn't listen to him. And we are still so stupid and ignorant that we are taking these positions because we don't like Mahama. Or because we want a visa to visit New York. I pity them. Look, today, if you compare Shanghai in China to New York, you won't spend your money going to New York. If it's about luxury, if it's about style, if it's about enjoyment, if it's about modernity in transportation and so on, it is not New York. It is Shanghai. So those who are doing this because they want visas to New York and so on, they've lost it. And they've lost it completely. They don't even know the world as it is today. Then, Senna, there's this other argument. I hope we have enough time. There's this other argument. Those who reduce all of this to the payment of monetary compensation. Reparation is not about monetary compensation. It is far bigger than that. And Senna, listen to me well. No amount of money can pay for the crimes which were committed against the African people. No amount of money. Okay? So to reduce reparation to the payment of money is to undermine the African dignity and so on. No amount of money. The essence of reparation is to reset the world. Okay? And why do we have to reset the world? In 1945, when the United Nations was being created as an instrument or a forum for the prevention of future war, and to institute a rule-based world order in which the dignity of the human being, wherever he is, will be respected and so on, we were not at the table. We were not there. Because we were colonies. We were not there. 1945, we were not there. So they built this United Nations structure, which does not give us any meaningful voice. Africa has a population of 1.4 billion people. We don't have a veto. 1.4 billion people don't have a veto. Britain has a veto. Britain has a veto. Can you imagine it? Britain, France has a veto. Can you imagine it? So they built the United Nations organization to our detriment. The agencies of the UN, including the World Trade Organization, the IMF and the World Bank and so on, were not built to facilitate African development and advancement. It was built to maintain our position as colonies in all its essence and so on. So we need to reset the world. We need to break down these institutions and build new ones in their place, which will reflect our African dignity, which would ensure that the African people have a voice. This is reparation. Okay? This is reparation. This is an aspect of reparation. I spoke about the destruction of African spirituality. We need to build new institutions. We need to build museums. We need to develop new curriculum for the study of history and so on. This is resetting. This is reparation. Okay? Now, these things cannot be done without funding. They cannot be done without funding. We have to find the resources from somewhere in order to make these things happen. And we are saying that we have money sitting in the banks in Europe. That money belongs to us. That money was the money which was accumulated through the labor of our people. That is surplus which was generated through the labor of our people. We are entitled to it. We are demanding it. We want to take it in order to restructure the world. That is what reparation is about. Reparation is about reconstructing world history from the very beginning. Reconstructing world history to reflect the fact that the art of bathing with soap was introduced to Europe by Africans. You understand? To reflect the fact that there were African monarchs who ruled in Europe and so on, which is missing in our history. To reflect the fact that at some point in history, the richest monarch in the world was Mansa Musa from Africa. To reflect the fact that when Don Diego de Zambuja landed at the port of Elmina, in his own manual, he wrote that Elmina had the most advanced gold mining enterprise in the world. These are the words of Don Diego de Zambuja. It must be taught in our schools. It must be reflected in the story about the world and so on. The story told by Don Diego de Zambuja must be told. You don't know it, and you feel entitled to spew rubbish and ignorance on our people. No. No. Reparation is about us. Look, and I'm happy my brother is here. My brother is more politically active than I am. You know, he's actually in the thick of things. This whole debate about the introduction of homosexuality or whatever in our educational curriculum, where is it coming from? It is partly because we have lost control over the development of our curriculum. And we are taking instructions from outside. So we teach what they tell us to teach. It became a big issue under MPP. Okay? Today, MPP members of parliament are raising the same issue about the Mahama government, saying that, oh, it hasn't changed. The Mahama government is still implementing the same thing and so. Are we not worried about the fact that educational curriculum is dictated from outside? Are we not worried? Then, Senator, let me say this one. There are those who say that, look, Africa is a beneficiary of aid. How are we complaining? These are the people who have been giving us aid. You've heard that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So why do you fight with them when they've been giving you aid and so? Their own institutions have carried out studies which show that every dollar they bring here, they take out 3 in exchange. Is that it? They themselves describe their aid as their foreign policy instruments. What does that mean?
Economic diplomacy, they call it.
Yeah, economic diplomacy, foreign policy instruments and so on. What does all that mean? Oh, Africa, with these type of leaders, Africa with these type of intellectuals and so on. Look, the time has come for the African people to rise up and take their destiny into their own hands and jettison these useless, God-forsaken people we have elevated to certain standards that they should not belong to them. The time has come to start the struggle all over again. The time has come to go back to the resolution of the 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945, which taught us that Africans need to take control of their resources and to exploit these resources for their own benefit. That Africans need to unite to build the United States of Africa under the broad banner of scientific socialism. And then. We are told, even those who disagree with us, they keep telling us that Africa needs to unite. Yes, Africa needs to unite. But why are we here? 1884, check the history. Otto von Bismarck, Chancellor of Germany, invited his colleague European leaders to come to Germany, to come to Bonn, so that they would divide Africa among themselves. They didn't want to fight over Africa's resources. They wanted to divide Africa among themselves, okay? So that they don't fight over our resources. So they put the map of Africa there. They took pencils and drew lines which today, by and large, serve as the boundaries of the states in Africa. Even the division of Africa was not done by us. It was done by them against our interests. Okay? So reparation involves this question of African unity. It is uppermost in the discussion of reparations. How do we unite? And we need to unite. Because I've traveled across borders in Africa, and what I see is shocking. Sana, I go to the Aflao border, Ghana-Togo border, one house. The bedroom is in Ghana, the kitchen is in Togo. This is the reality on the borders. I go west to the Ivory Coast border. The Nzima people, some of them are Ghanaians, some of them are Ivorians. How does this make sense? Because those who partitioned Africa did not care who your father was. They did not care where your bathroom would be located. They did not care where your uncle sits. They did not care where your farm is. What they cared about most was how they can steal your gold, how they can steal your diamond, how they can force you to produce rubber for King Leopold of Belgium. That is what they talked about. And all that will change. The struggle has begun. It began a long time ago. It is continuing in the chambers of the United Nations. It will go out of the chambers of the United Nations. And we, our people, must mobilize to defeat the enemy, the local enemy and the external enemy. Whatever happens, the African people, the working people of the world, will be victorious in this bold confrontation with exploitation. Nothing will stop our victory.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Don't worry, you know the arrangement. So that I'll start the next topic with you, so that you can share the views you have. A few comments in there, a couple of them. First, let me start from Facebook. This is Salam Suleiman who says, Mr. President, national asset and need to be protected. Emmanuel Kobnati Abuaji says, the same Ghanaians are fighting benefits to us and other African countries. Miriam Mahama says, it's because of the slave trade, that's why the black man is hated and treated like nothing, which has led to racism. Kimi Ahonfe, you are right, Kwesi Pratt. I came back from Shanghai to London 2 days ago, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Beautiful, cordial, and well-organized city. In fact, China as a whole is super. There's Rehan Shaban who says, Israel, as we speak, is receiving reparations from Germany due to the Luxembourg Agreement signed 1952. A selfish and supremacist state. By their fruit you shall know them. Sokoli Helia says, Senna, is reparation is a solution to our problem? Is a question. I think that this will help. To those who are trying to understand the contents of reparation, Mr. Pratt did a fantastic job for us. There's a book, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Reparation, the History, the Struggle, and the Politics.
The law.
And the law. Okay. So you can get that book. Go to Freedom Center, Kokomlemle. Read that book. It puts everything into context. That's exactly what we are asking for when we say we're asking for. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So if you are anywhere in the world, you can get it on Amazon. They'll deliver it to you. It's easy to help put it into context. And in fact, the quote Lawyer read tells you exactly how they feel about it. So they know that reparations will cost their entire economy. Anyway, this is Richie Prempe who says, Mr. Pratt, tell them. Afrikuku Sapo, Sena, this is why I love listening to Uncle Kwesi Pratt. Oh my God, that's a superb presentation. Maestro Finley, Gaddafi Jr. I really love this fact from our dear historian, Mr. Pratt. Please, take it cool for we the masses. Okay. Raymond Bachman says, hey, listener, why is no one mentioning, it says the black slaves in India. What about Australian black slaves? There's also Munir Asani Haruna who is joining us. Good morning. And thank you very much for some of those comments you've shared with us. A couple on WhatsApp. This one says, I salute you this morning. Anytime I listen to you, I learn a lot. Please, I suggest you find time to write us some history. Amma sent that. But he says he's been trying to do that for many years. Fred Tabri in Techiman says, written one. Fred Tabri Techiman says, so let's consider what is happening now with Galamsey, which is a serious crime against nature and humanity. Can we simply say because Ghanaians are involved in doing Galamsey, Chinese should not be seen as major contributors to Galamsey? This is Magdo from Alajo. Yes, good morning. Ghana is a very interesting country, and the MPP always wants to identify themselves with everything good that President Mahama achieved. From the noise that Akufo-Addo should be commended for starting the issue of reparation. Why and how? You spend 8 years in government and another president less than 2 years to achieve the laurel and want to be recognized with this. Africa is proud of President Mahama. So those are some of the comments. We have to move on to the next topic for discussion, and Solomon also is on the war on Iran. So this is US, Israel on one side, Iran on the other side. Keeps expanding, keeps going. To other Gulf states, among others. One of the countries that's taken a lot of fire is Lebanon. Yes, from Israel. A lot of fire from Israel, Lebanon. Mr. Owusu.
Yes, before I get into Israel and then Iran, I think there is a question that has to be answered. And I feel strongly about it, that we cannot leave our locals out. You see, when we say trading, for trading to take place, there has to be a buyer and there has to be a seller. Without these two components, there is nothing like trading. So for us to even name it as transatlantic slave trade means there were buyers and sellers. And to that extent, we cannot take... No, but I'm coming, Mr. Pratt. That's why, you see... It was the European who named the transatlantic slave trade. But that's what you're using. You have not also changed from it. You are using the same name. And I'm saying that for there to be trading, there has to be a buyer and a seller. Our people aided in the whites also selling them. So we must also buying them, that's it. So we must look straight into those that perpetrated that crime and deal with them. Again, interestingly, Mr. Pratt ended by agreeing with the very position he disagreed. I am of the opinion that the leaders of Africa today do not engender any confidence, majority of them for that matter, that any monies whatsoever be brought to them. We have what it takes to build our own continent. We must begin to do things that are right, unless until we remove borders in Africa, trade amongst ourselves, a continent that sits on trillions of dollars. We are unable to even do business with us. Take a typical case, and this is why I'm going to lead to your next topic. Our next door is Nigeria. Nigeria imports salt from Brazil, whereas they resort at Adasongo. Is it because of the transatlantic trade that Nigeria is unable to do business with Ghana? So we must also begin to do ourselves self-introspection, so that things that could help propel the continent to a different stage, we handle them carefully. Again, we are talking about oil and gas. You and I know that with the Iran-Israeli unnecessary war, now African leaders are telling us that they are in talks with Dangote. Why must there be a war in Iran, in Tehran, for the Strait of Hormuz to be affected before African leaders see the need that they must be dealing with Dangote if Dangote is in a position to supply us with our oil? That's why I say that a lot of the issues, yes, you can fight, yes, it has been, we all of us agree that the transatlantic slave trade was the gravest of all the kind. In any case, that is even tautology. The world has not come to an end. We don't even know what is going to be gravier than this. The world has not come to an end. So we can't even establish at this stage, Mr. Pratt, that this will be the highest crime against humanity.
That's not what the resolution says.
But that's the gravest.
It says the gravest so far. That's what
so far. So it means there could be a higher crime, but at this stage we can take it. But the point really is that, yes, we agree that it wasn't good, but my concern and my attitude to this whole thing is that we must, as a continent, begin to do what is right, so that we are not pushed into an era where we may be, people will come here and just take it like a piece of stone and do anything anyhow with this. I don't think that is what we are all crying for. Now, Israel, Iran, US. You see, once again, you cannot look at it and say that Iran sitting in this country and other countries attacking them, they are wrong. I mean, if I'm in my house and an armed robber comes in, I'll fight. So Iran fighting back is their legitimate political, constitutional, legal, spiritual, moral right to fight back. That one is established. But my greatest disappointment with the Iranian regime has to do with the fact that it seems to me their security system was that compromised. So compromised. Other than that, I tell you, even with Ghana, that people think we are not sophisticated. You cannot just come and then the first attempt, you strike out our leaders. The next attempt, you are killing leaders by heart. It means the security is compromised. And that for me is where I find it very difficult to understand. I find it so difficult that US and Israeli forces were able to strike Tehran daylight to take out the supreme leader of Iran. And every day, to the extent that the security advisor, Larijani, was just taken out with ease. How do you defend such a position? Now they are bombing at will. Bombing at will. And I don't know what sort of strategy. The idea that in retaliating, they are also attacking the regional groupings, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. It complicates matters because you see, the last time I checked, I don't know how much the UAE is involved in this whole matter, but the UAE has received more missiles than Israel. And I've been thinking of it. So it complicates the entire. But be that as may, all of us are going to suffer from it. It's not only Iran, the US will suffer from it, Israel will suffer from it, but it tells you that we have a world that we have bullies. And that the set of laws that we have given to ourselves as a world and then adopted by the UN, as a matter of fact, does not work. It only works when those that are powerful are the ones implementing it. You know, and the international law on this matter is very clear. It's so clear. And it tells us, once again, that a lot of countries are not prepared for the worst case scenario. So once matters of this nature happens, all that we have to do is to look at ourselves and see whether or not we are prepared for any eventuality. I remember when COVID, they told us that COVID was in the air. The panic levels that it created, how unprepared the country was, we were exposed. Once again, with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, that 20% of the world's oil that passes there indirectly or directly that should not ordinarily affect Ghana, we are now paying for it. Now you ask yourself, what have we been doing with our oil and our oil revenue? Because that is the crux of the matter. If we were sufficient in terms of our local oil production, at least we will be saved by the bell. Once again, we have oil in this country. We ship all to Singapore, to Rotterdam, and we go and buy finished products. One tour has been there since the 70s. Now to our brothers in the United States and Israel. Right now, I don't even know who is telling the truth. Donald Trump comes today and says there is negotiation. The next moment, Abbas Arachi says, oh, don't mind those people. There is no negotiation. So who is telling the truth? The next moment, they say they are going to bomb power infrastructure. The next moment, we are told, oh, offers have been made, so it has been extended to April 6th. But in all these, the people of Iran, the people of Israel, the people of US, and the world at large is suffering. Can you imagine? You know, we had this resolution passed at the United Nations. That body, I don't think it's serious. In all this melee, in all this confusion, do you know, Senator, that the only resolution that has been passed at the United Nations on this matter is a resolution against Iran? You see the body you have been dealing with? That UN, you know where the source of this trouble is coming from. Then go and pass a resolution. The resolution is against the person, the person who is being afflicted. So I have come to understand this world. That you may be right, but because you are not with the right league, you may be seen as the wrong person. It's a lesson that anybody must learn the hard way. Now, so far, having eliminated the first set, the second set, and the third set of Iranians, and with the US claiming that they are negotiating, whom are they negotiating with? And with those that they are negotiating with, do they have the consent and the mandate of the people of Iran to do that on their stead? Or in their stead? That is my greatest difficulty. The children that are being killed daily, Sarah. The ordinary Iranians, the last time I checked, things are so bad in Tehran that now they have to, as it were, print money. Like what we did. Now 10 million real is equivalent to about $7. Why must we sit down for this to happen to a sovereign country? Now, to add insult to injury, I hired my brothers from Uganda, the commander of the Ugandan army in Africa, living peacefully, saying they are going to fight alongside Israel. Hey! Throwing Africa into a needless battle. So, we must call them as they are, who they are, but unfortunately, we don't have the balls to do that because we are in a bully world, and so you can only calling them out, appeal to all interested parties to at this stage note that we did not come to this world to be spectators. There are 3 countries who hold all of us into ransom and disrupt all the economies around us and put a lot of lives in danger. And that the earlier they understood this phenomenon and stopped the war, the better it will be for all of us. At this stage, I believe that firing of missiles across continents, across countries, is not what will solve the problem, but rather dialogue. And this is where I expect a body like the UN to step in. Because now it seems to be, it will be very difficult for the neighboring countries, such as the Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, to also intervene. Because they themselves are also part of the war now, indirectly, because they have been hit. So the UN must play a big role to ensure that what has been destroyed will end, and all of us will move on. I'll end it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Laura.
Yes, Senator, thank you. And I also like to thank Uncle Kwesi Pratt for the beautiful submission that is made on the slavery and slave trade. I think there is a little bit of a confusion when it comes to slave trade and slavery. There is a difference between the two. That is why people are still saying that we were part of it. When it comes to slavery, under no circumstance were Africans part of it. Slavery has to do with the exploitation of the people. That is why I think Uncle Kwesi was making the submission. He said that somebody said we started with donkors and other things. Yes, it is true. People were given out as slaves. But to exploit them in the manner that that's why I cited an example that yes, even we have European slaves, but they paid them. It's about the slavery. I think we've passed that topic, so you go and check it so that I get a better understanding of what we are talking about, the reparation. It's about the slavery, how we were exploited, we were not paid, we were killed. That's what we're talking about. Now to US and Iraq, Iran, whatever. The US, I think, how I see things is that the US president miscalculated the whole attack on Iran. They tested this with Venezuela, and to some extent it worked, because one day They moved in there and captured the president. As we speak, I think he's still with the US. Yes, they captured them. And the US, as we speak, they are having a certain level of control over the oil of Venezuela. Yes, that's what is happening. And they use a similar approach in Iraq. And it appears to me that it is failed. Iran, thank you, is backfiring. Because if you look at the strategy, they went in fact, the Israelis used prisoners of war in Iran to gather intelligence, phone numbers of the leaders, and then they tracked them. That's how come they were able to kill all of them at once and within a specific place when they were having a meeting. Once that was achieved, I believe in the wisdom of Trump, once we get the supreme leader and all his commanders killed in one day, we can use the rest of about the 13 days, because he gave a 14 days period for the war. We can use the 13 days left to ensure that there is a new crop of leadership there with our control, so that just as we have control over the oil of Venezuela, we can also have control over Iran. But little did they know that the Iranians also had other strategies that their intelligence could never reveal. So what is happening now? Iranians are fighting back, although their supreme leader was killed. Just like Solo was saying, Trump says that we are negotiating some 15 points, whatever, with Iraq. And he was asked, are you negotiating with their supreme leader? That is the son of the former supreme leader. Or say, oh, we don't even know him. Who are you negotiating? We don't know. But we are negotiating some nice people, and he used some jargons and some words. They are very nice people, but these are bad people. So what was the aim of Trump moving into that war? And let's not forget that even the US citizens, the people of the United States of America, majority of them are not in support of this war. Here is the case: you have defense, air defense systems, which one costs in millions of dollars. Iraq are firing drones. Why am I still on Iraq? Iran, sorry. Firing drones at so cheap a cost, but still they are able to penetrate through the defense systems of these people. And my brother was asking the question, why are they attacking other places? We have American bases at certain places. That's why some people are of the opinion that in this country of ours, if we say that we don't have our foreign policy is such that we are a non-aligned nation, then we shouldn't allow the United States to have their base in Ghana. Because if they have their base in Ghana, what it means is that whatever thing that they want to do, they can operate from your land and attack your neighbor. So if they can operate on my land and attack your land and attack me, and I want to attack them, I come to you. That is the problem, and that is the reason why Iran is doing what they are doing. So it's not just a matter of just attacking anybody, but they are also fighting back, because the United States of America is using those positions to attack them. You see, when it comes to war, for example, if the US is having a base in Ghana and is firing missiles from Ghana to any other country, and the other country want to retaliate, you think it is just going to say that my bombs are going to land only at where the physical location of the US base? No, that's not going to happen. He will try to attack places that will hurt you the most. For this reason, or for what we are seeing, do you think any country going forward will love to have probably another state having its base, say the US, in their country. So this thing, I see a war that the US who started it themselves, they never anticipated that it will get to this level. They told us, Trump told us that Iran is not having an army, they are not having navy, neither are they having what do you call it, their air force. Yes, totally collapsed and eradicated. So where are the bombs coming from? Are they coming from the citizens or what? So there is more to what Donald Trump knows as far as this war is concerned. Look at the effect this thing is having on the whole world. Thankfully, we have a leadership in Ghana that they claim when things are happening outside the country, it wouldn't have an effect on us. I disagree, and they've been exposed badly. I mean, the MDC government, they have been exposed badly because what is happening outside there is having an effect on us. There are some countries now, I have forgotten the name, that they are rationing fuel as we speak. It's in Philippines, right? Rationing fuel, closing down institutions during certain hours of the day. Why? Because the strait that has been closed is having a significant toll on the entire world. So I think whatever negotiation that Trump says he's having should be quick, and he should accept the fact that he miscalculated, he misfired, and this war must come to a total end for us all to have our peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A few comments.
Yes. It's, having listened to Senior Comrade Pratt and his education on the slave trade, some of the key lessons I've learned, and then his position on, or rather, the proposition of what reparation means, with all the key dimensions around it. It's very inspiring to me, and I want to thank you, Senior Comrade. Brother Solo and Lawyer Kwachi has made some very important points about the Iran case. The war in Iran between the U.S. and the attack on the U.S. and Israel. I would say that my submission, I would like to draw some parallelism in terms of the ideology that pushed the U.S. and Israel to attack Iran and try to, unravel the root cause of that, because this whole situation we are facing today it didn't really start 2-3 weeks ago. For 50 years, the U.S. had been consistently been looking at how they can attack Iran, and the inspiration for doing that emanate from this ideology which I want to tackle first, and then I'll look at what it means to us today, and how can Ghana actually position itself, because at the end of the day, if the war continues to prolong, how are we going to organize ourselves as a country and as government to be able to deliver to citizens, and also to continue to survive the ramifications of this war that we didn't cause, but it's having an impact on all of us. In 1953, Iran has a democratically elected government, all right, Mossadegh, and the Prime Minister, Mossadegh, actually reflected on a very key objective which really relates to the 19th, relates to the Pan-African Congress that was held in 1945, in which he stated very clearly to UK, who was controlling their oil fortunes, to say, The oil of Iran is a national asset that Iranians need to control. It has to mean something for Iranians, and Iranians must be able to explore this oil for their own best benefit. Winston Churchill then, the Prime Minister of the UK, said, no, this is an insult, because ideologically, it had a white supremacist idea that it is the West that has to continue to dominate the fortunes of other countries. He wouldn't have anything of that. He connived with the CIA to depose him from government. So a democratically elected prime minister was deposed through the coup d'etat by the CIA, by the country that is said to be the architect of modern democracy, the United States. So on one hand, you can depose a democratically elected government and it is fine in your own terms. On the other hand, if somebody else does it without recourse to you, then it is evil. So when they deposed him, they replaced him with a monarch, Shah, who continues to control Iran, backed by the West. And all of that effort was to control the oil fortunes of Iran. And when the revolution happened in 1979, to unseat the Shah and to bring in the Islamic leadership under the Ayatollah, which was an affront to democracy, then Iran became a target of the West since that time, since 1979. And there have been several attempts to undermine the government of Iran, to unseat it, simply because of what happened in 1953. So, past government, in fact, presidents have always held a war room discussion about how they have to attack Iran. Now, they've always been advised that it is much easier to say, well, let me bomb Iran, let me kill the leader, the supreme leader, let me destroy their nuclear arsenals, and then you'll be able to take control of the country. That has been their calculation, and Lawyer Kwachi was very right. Trump miscalculated Iran's resistance and its ability to really strengthen its resilience against this war. And what they didn't realize is that Iran has also been studying America to know that if you want to really destroy an American president and its legacy, you have to sustain a long war. When you're able to do that, Americans themselves will rise up against that president and will want to fight. So the gross miscalculation of Trump is to the extent that now Trump is found himself in a war, trapped in a war, which he was coerced by Israel to do. And he's not finding a way out of it. And Iran is determined to sustain this war for as long as it takes to cause Americans to revolt against Donald Trump himself. So that is the tension that is actually at play today. So what does it mean to us today? Today, the situation of the world economy is not going to improve. It's not going to change until this war is actually, there's an end to this war. And what it means is that every country now has to try and find its way to organize its own supply chain in terms of what you need from a global economy. So Ghana has to be able to develop a strategy to be self-reliant or self-sufficient in our ways, and that is and every country else have to do that. And therefore, it is extremely important for us as a nation now to begin to ask ourselves, what are the systems that we can put in place that will enable us to be able to have an essential commodities that we need to. And how do we want to do that so that in ways that it will help us to build resilience in our economy and will not also bring hardship to our people. And I think this is a very tough question that we have to put our minds to try to unravel. And it is not a question of politics, it's a question of survival. And then a question of making sure that every citizens actually have what it takes. And I think one of the things that we need to begin to think about is really, number one, how we address our food security by ourselves. I mean, you can't import $3.5 billion of food every year when you have the opportunity to actually produce this in country. So essential commodities such as the ones that we are pushing through the 25 economy, things like we make sure that we have our cassava, we make sure we have our maize, our cereals, and all of this. So we need to really reset our agricultural sector and get everybody to really know that it is important for us to be food sufficient. Now the other thing is also we have to think about our essential drugs. We cannot continue to import our essential drugs in this country, over $500 million per year, dollars per year. You can't do that. We have to be able to manufacture some of our essential drugs that we do have in this country. The other point is we have to address the things that always constrain our ability to get food and commodities circulating around the country. Why is it that you produce tomatoes and then you have 60% post-harvest losses? How is it that you have to rely on tomatoes imported from Burkina Faso when you can pull tomatoes from Volta region by just addressing logistics and market efficiency and the post-harvest losses? So I think that we have to begin to look at how to address our logistics and the issues of post-harvest losses and efficient movement of commodities to our markets, so that as a country, whilst this war is going on, we have addressed the fundamentals of what our citizens need. This is the question that everybody must put their mind on to do. The other point, which is really part of what Comrade Kwesi Pratt talked about, is leveraging what the president has done by calling for through this UN resolution to engage strongly the discussions around the reconstruction of the world order, in which Africans have equal opportunity to influence these global decisions that affect it. We cannot, for example, why is it that we are not able to have UN Security Council reforms to be able to bring the African on a table to have to be engaging decisions that would affect the continent? We have to engage the reconstruction of the world order, and we have to do that by forcefully, continuously talking about these issues about reparation and be very clear what we meant by the reparation agenda. And that would help in the context of trying to address these issues that we have. Now, one of the things that baffles me is if we Africans, we are going to be the ones of the worst affected by the war which is happening in Iran, and because of our continuous dependence on global supply chain. Why haven't we as a continent decided to get some special envoys to mediate on this to this war? Why what is preventing African Union to pull together some eminent persons to start engaging Iran, particularly to start negotiating some of the global supply chains to us? I mean, Pakistan has done it. They're able to move some of their oil. Why is it difficult for us to have this type of thinking? Because, it's a survival of the fittest. And we have to be very selfish of our interests as well. We have to promote our interests selfishly. If this war is organized around, the West, I would say, and we Africans have not meddled in this, but we do have some compassion from our friends in the Gulf, especially Iran. I think that we need to make we need to take that opportunity for somebody to begin to speak about our interest and start negotiating it in the context of this war. Because if this war continues to be like this, and it is stretching to the end of the year, you cannot predict what is going to happen to our economies from today. Because the war can escalate into an area where we cannot imagine, or it can end sooner. But we need to be able to seek our personal interests. And therefore, I believe that it is important for leaders, African leaders now, through the auspices of the African Union, to begin to see how we can engage in some form of negotiation for our interests, especially to allow the movement of certain essential goods to us, whilst at the same time we as a country begin to produce these things for ourselves.
Thank you, Doc. Well, interesting. At every turn we must selfishly pursue our own interests. Yes. Mr. Pratt.
Well, the problem with this war is that Donald Trump entered into this war without a strategy, without an understanding of what he was walking into. Indeed, he walked into the war more like a nursery child, playing a video game. And it's becoming obvious. He's lost. And when I listen to Donald Trump, I just wonder how any people could have actually, through a so-called democratic process, ended up with a leader like this. It's so shocking. It's unbelievable. You understand? Now, let me explain. You see, the Strait of Hormuz is not just vital for oil. Indeed, it is vital for everything. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz affects everything. It affects agriculture. Because the vast majority of chemical fertilizer passes through the strait. It affects pharmaceutical supplies. That's the strait, which is used to ship pharmaceutical supplies to many parts of the world and so on. So that's a big problem for the world. Now, Donald Trump, who claims to be winning the war, is begging other nations to join. He's won the war already, and yet he's begging other nations to join. Now, what is significant is that those other nations understand what he has started better than him. There's no way you can open the Strait of Hormuz. No way. Donald Trump's idea is that they should bring their naval ships and then they will escort the cargo ships through the straits. You see, if you look at the Strait of Hormuz, you can stand anywhere in Iran and fire into the Strait of Hormuz. Especially now that we know that Iran has missiles with a reach of 4,000 kilometers. Initially, everybody thought that Iran's missiles had a reach of 2,000 kilometers. When they fired one at Diego Garcia, it became obvious that they had missiles which have a range of 4,000 kilometers. So anywhere you stand in Iran, anywhere, you can actually fire into the Strait of Hormuz. So to secure the Strait of Hormuz, what you need to do is to have total dominance, and I mean total dominance over the land, and it's impossible. So all the things that Trump is talking about, securing the Strait of Hormuz and so on, is his ignorance which is being displayed. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. But that's only one issue. Donald Trump, he says, I'm talking to the Iranians. They are actually begging me to stop the war. But don't forget that he himself had told us that he has killed all the Iranian leaders and now there's nobody to talk to.
And he's destroyed a nuclear.
Donald Trump, he says he has killed all the Iranian leaders. There's nobody to talk to. And yet he's talking to Iranian leaders. Who is he talking to? Ghost? I mean, unbelievable. Donald Trump comes and he says he has obliterated the Navy and the Air Force of Iran. So he's finished them and so on. Donald Trump forgets that the US Army went into Afghanistan. The Taliban did not have a Navy. The Taliban did not have an Air Force. And they ran out of Afghanistan with their tails between their legs. So, what is he talking about? I mean, who is this man, Donald Trump? How does his brain work? I don't know. His brain must be working in some, I don't know. It's so strange. You understand? Look, a few months before they launched this second aggression against Iran, Donald Trump boasted about the power of the US Army, how the US Army was so wonderful, that they had actually gone into Iran and obliterated its capacity to produce a nuclear weapon. Obliterated. And he uses that word a lot. I don't know who taught him that word, but he's in love with that word and he's always using it. Now, if it is true that the US, under the direction of Donald Trump, obliterated Iran's capacity to produce a nuclear weapon, what are they doing there now? Because you have already obliterated their capacity to produce a nuclear weapon. So why are you there? What are you doing now? It doesn't make sense. Something is wrong. You have a world leader who has his fingers on a nuclear button, whose brain doesn't appear to be functioning well. Okay? That's the problem we have. Masha, you put that aside. Donald Trump says that, look, in that region, if you possess a nuclear weapon, it's a very dangerous thing. You must be stopped, you must be bombed, and so on. But we know that Israel has nuclear weapons. Israel, which has teamed up with Donald Trump to bomb Iran, has nuclear facilities. So, where is the moral authority to bomb Iran because Iran has nuclear facilities when Israel has nuclear facilities and then nuclear bombs on top of it? Where is the moral authority? In any case, history is very important for me. The Iran nuclear program was started in 1957 with the full collaboration of the US, Germany, and France. They started the Iranian nuclear program in 1957. Okay? The US trained 4,000 Iranian scientists to work on the nuclear program, and so on. They had no problem with it. In fact, today, they are complaining about uranium enrichment up to 60%. Iran has enriched uranium up to 95% before, with the participation of the US. What has changed? You know, it doesn't make any sense. You understand? Now, the US does not appear to know Iran. The US and Israel, they don't know Iran. They thought that by the assassination of Ayatollah Khomeini and some frontline leaders, the regime would collapse. It hasn't collapsed. In fact, it appears to be getting stronger. You understand? Because yesterday, the attacks on Israeli cities yesterday, the magnitude, it's unbelievable. Look, they are now directing their missiles at Diego Garcia, where the US and Britain have a military base, 4,000 miles away. The US never thought that that was possible. They completely underestimated, Iran. And it's because they don't understand Iran. They don't know Iran. Look, the Islamic Revolutionary Corps, Guard, is perhaps one of the most seriously decentralized armies in the world. It is so decentralized, it's unbelievable. There's no army in the world which is as decentralized as the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. So, and they have a system of succession which is beautiful. As soon as you kill a leader, there's the next one who takes over, and it continues without disruption. You kill the commander, immediately there's another commander without disruption. This is the system they have built. Now they built the system to the extent that even in some areas, the missiles and drones are automatically fired. So when you kill all the soldiers, it will still not stop the missiles and drones from being fired because they will fire automatically. They don't understand this because their own system is not like that. They cannot understand it. You understand? The effect is that it's creating troubles for everybody. This is a war they can never win. They know they can never win. And this morning as I was driving into the studio, I was listening to some guy in the United States of America who claims that he's one of the founders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards and so on, you know. And he was talking about how it functions and so on. He is talking about how it functions and so on. And he's saying that, look, you go and kill anybody, foreign minister, ayatollah and so on, it makes no impact. You know how they started? After the 1979 revolution, there was a fear that the West was going to topple the regime. So they decided that every Iranian adult should bear arms in order to prevent foreign invasion and to prevent the overthrow of their revolution. Iran is 90 million people. 90 million people. So if they took a decision to arm every adult, what is the adult population? Let's say 30%. That is 30 million people under arms. If you calculate it that way, 30 million people under arms. How many soldiers can you send into Iran to overwhelm them? And I hear they are sending 10,000 people towards Iran and they think that the Iranians will shake. They have millions of people under arms. Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not Afghanistan. Iran is not Venezuela. It is Iran. It's a massive power. But they underestimate it. And look at what is happening. Now, the whole of West Asia and the Gulf region is in crisis. Israel has never seen the level of devastation it's suffering today. Never in its history. Yesterday, the Israeli defense minister actually made a statement to the effect that Israel has reached its limit. This is the defense minister says Israel has reached its limit. And that they fear that there may be an implosion in the Israeli Defense Force. Implosion in the Israeli Defense Force. Because they are fighting on too many fronts. You know, their resources are being pushed, you know, to the limit and so on. Israel cannot continue to fight this war for another 3 months. Israel will collapse. Even the United States is having to move weapons from Asia, from Korea, from Japan, other places, in order to survive in this war. The US is being stretched to the full.
And they've been paid for the defense.
Massa, yesterday, Marco Rubio, he told the G17 meeting that they may even have to divert resources from Ukraine, the Ukraine war, to fight this war. This is the war they say they've won. Why are you diverting resources from other places to fight this war? And you see, the thing is that Iran, they manufacture drones. And first of all, the story of how Iran came to become masters of drone manufacturing is interesting. The Americans sent spy drones over Iran. And you know what they did? They managed to enter into the brain of one of the drones and directed the drone to land in Iran. And they used reverse engineering to produce a better drone than the one they brought down. This is how they became masters of the technology of manufacturing drones. So Iran is manufacturing drones at less than $10,000 each, far less than $10,000 each. When they send one, the US has to spend equipment worth more than $1 million to come back that drone. And that is why at the beginning of the war, if you notice, Iran actually created dummies. They drew aeroplanes and missiles and so on, drawings. And the Americans spent their very expensive bombs attacking dummies. It was not real. They were making the Americans waste their resources attacking dummies. And they were laughing at them. You understand? Why? Iran deliberately sends, fires drones and so on towards American bases, towards Israel and so on. Not because it wants to hit the target and so on, but it wants them to fire at that to waste their ammunition.
It's very expensive.
It has prepared for a long war, not a short one. So you waste your ammunition today. We are reserving our most sophisticated ammunition, which we are going to use later. Do you know that Iran has publicly come forward to say that, what we are using now is the old stock. It's our least effective weapons. That's what we are using now. It was last week that for the first time, they released one of their modern weapons. It's a hypersonic weapon. They fired only one. Their hypersonic stock, they fired only one. Can you imagine? Their missiles, which can travel more than 2,000 kilometers, they fired only one. What does that tell you? That tells you that they are stocking and they are waiting for the long haul. And the Iranians have said that it is not the US which will stop the war. The US cannot tell us when to stop the war. They started it, but we will stop it. Do you know what that means? That you started it, but we are going to stop it. And we are going to stop it on our terms. We are going to stop it at a time when we are sure that you cannot attack us again. We are going to stop this war at a time when we are sure that the Lebanese people will have their freedom. We are going to stop it at a time when we will be free as a country to do as we please, not as you dictate, and so on. That's what the Iranians have said clearly. Now the Americans have sent a 15-point something document for the resolution of the conflict. And when I read it, I laughed. The Americans are saying that we are ready to stop the war. But one, stop the production of drones and missiles. How is that possible? Even now that they have drones and missiles, look at how you are misbehaving in the territory. So that's a no. Okay? Now, you see, Sana, from the beginning, I said that Donald Trump is behaving like a nursery child playing video games. Why? I mean it. You remember when Donald Trump warned that if the Iranians don't listen to him, he will actually go and bomb their island for fun. The US president, he's going to bomb another country for fun. Is this not a nursery people playing video games? He's bombing for fun. People are dying. It's for fun. For him, it's just fun. Unbelievable. But you see, this war has a catastrophic impact on everybody living in the world. And when you say this, my brother, some of your people, they say, we said that Russia-Ukraine war has an impact on Ghana and it was denied. How can you say that this one has a catastrophic effect on the world? Master, Ukraine is not Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is not in Asia, it's not in West Asia. The impacts are different. They will definitely be different. The geographical locations are different. The strategic locations are different, and so on. The impact of Russia-Ukraine war can never be the same as the impact of Israel, USA, Iran war. It can never be the same. The factors are different. Everything is different. Okay. Oh, certainly there was an impact. Okay. But the impact, even according to the World Bank report, I'm sure you've read it, and the IMF report, if you read it. Why? The impact of the Ukraine war, the relief we got far exceeded the impact. And the relief we got, rather than apply it to COVID and so on, it was distributed among parliamentary candidates. The evidence is there. Ally. Parliamentary candidates came and said that you gave us the money and so on. We know. We used the money to import vaccines which never came and lost the money and so on. So we know. So please don't go there. No, you have never been there. I know you have never been there. But some of your people go there. No, you haven't been there.
This morning you were there.
Oh, were you there?
Oh, you were there.
What I said was,
you were there.
If I should refresh your memory, I said that sarcastic that we were told that because a bomb has not dropped in Ghana, we will not have the impact. But we know
Dr.
that
certainly
certainly
said that.
That what?
That
Is for another day. Look at that time. That's another day.
As for impact,
How can we say
there will be an impact.
Yes.
But compared to what is happening today,
Because they said there couldn't have been an impact. That's what the problem
there
lies.
was an impact, but it was small.
So, no matter how minute it, if that had been the communication, now they decided to it is.
Which you didn't apply
No,
to.
that's why I'm saying that is for another day. That's for another day. Because of our time, that's for another day.
So
But the time is up.
Midobi biase say wetimi tie na wahwe video no up to this extent, and ubetimi enemy aya adwin say in fact we gain a lot of education from this particular content amede buy. You can tell me say we gain a lot of content, a lot of what? Education. When you disuadie bebre ewo saa content ya mega medi beso mu emu, because akuku damfo omo adwum abobew omo nim de omo ye ena omo kasa edifa asasem we ehun. So you can say na chese asem no edika because transatlantic, in fact, trade slave no na say slave trade, you know, amebo Africa ene Ghana ni ewe ni say wankwa asori kwesi dia onye yie Ghana ni ewe nso kwa asori na oba na oni nya beko a eye normal since wankwa asori ene because of Bible ninti do ene ya adwin na kwayese I don't even know how to say it. And now so for the Bible bunipa Ghana. Ni na kan de abrofo de ba eri hu. Ni na a slave. Say wuni man, let me tell you, ni na a slave. A mental slavery. And the bibini say ohun bronia na ni nyame ero no. Na nka de na yi na eti Ghana hanom. Na omosisa contract edema China for. Miwa unu ya ohanom Ibrahim Mahama so mo man contractor na Ghana ni bu afu. Ibrahim Mahama so oji contractor na Ghana ni bu afu. Miwa Ibrahim Mahama asem to wa obetimi aboa wo odi kwoto na nimi nko ade a ba China ni no owie na otu ni gold no de odi ni sika ni income ni ko ni mamu a odi koye ni manye ye hi ni se omo di ni na besi akọ no mo the percentage ni na sanko na ye ya say tire ko ma suffer the consequence of it like who your mind na community na nearby no and say the kidney problem involved no that is sinai and you be use ni de ka ho no e be wi na ma heart failure, kidney problem, in fact liver issues unyina na fe de o attack you unyina na attack you what in common as enti abrofo no moye bi papa but ye ni and ye bibini say won to kwen kwa buruchira onye yie. I'm telling you ye bibini adwin say so wotena Ghana ha obi betimi otena Ghana ha aye doctor aje ketua be ebia be 5,000 a month. But Pako still now he will grammering for what? Traveling obekwa buruchiri so kwa akoye adwuma okwa uni adwuma be obe cleaning doctor no ye no ha no onye punctual da ope o frɛ no kra okɔ no ma o me surgery o me operation o me prescribe adura na oyɛ no ho star bi but okɔ abrochi no ma cleaning adwuma no osora homache 5 na okɔtena so asia ya extra time e dia ka ho o de be extra time e dia eden asia ka ho but oni kromu a adwuma en obi avalu no onfa nya adwuma onya adwuma papa bia what na me chona say enti eye bibini say wontu kwan anko ni nua Kwesi Broni na say Kwesi Broni kromu a onye yie. That has been the mindset editi kromu a that has been the mindset apu ya mitisu sabi Broni na yeye bibini aye absisi ya beka se enye papa but Broni ye die obi atisubi mega metisubi also tisubi ene ye na ye enjoy. That is the mental slavery I am talking about. Enti ya Kwesi Broni anye se de obechichi ye papa ye na no nko kekewu ye maame no na mom osanso di adwempo bia hye etirimu a it constituents and I say it consists of a lot of adwimuhaw in terms of slavery. It is not, there is not are you hearing impairment and I say uwanya adwimu I mean wadwinye adwuma dabi na mom oda die bia be show mu in a sense say wanye sadie ya obagiche sadie ya mi enye ye. And that is what we are seeing now. When to kwa brochira, you may think say we out to Ghana ha, you won't be successful as you want. And then kwasem die abrofo de omaye bi papa. Enti John Mahama me mbona baso na sa good news we ya ordinama or boom chan no. Muma ye na yen supported this crusade. Na omai we yen bobwa ye ho. Let's be each other's keeper. Na yenjai mpapamu, yenjai ntitimu, yenjai nsemhunu no. Emboa. What na micho na se? Enti abusuafo. Kwesi Pratt Junior, any Solomon Owusu, any the other communicators no. Minyo mo de omo acheche ni mo mani age pa. And I wish say you be taken into consideration. Ebe boy na. Chira wadwon comment section ni. Macro. Bye bye.